Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm Sean Richards and I work for UCL Institute of Education. If you can't hear me at the back, do this and I'll talk a bit louder. Sorry, I'm from the UCL IOE, Institute of Education, from the Centre, Post-14 Centre for Education and Work. And what I'd like to do in this short talk is just to give you a summary of some of the work we've been doing in careers education over the last year. Careers education is something I believe that the Institute for Education has kept an eye on over several years, but certainly since the centre was reformed last year, there's been a wish to bring our understandings of the landscape of careers education up to date for the post-14 sector. So we are kind of concerned with colleges. So we've done 3 pieces of work over the last year, which I'd like to summarise some of the findings from. 2 of those were very broad evaluations looking at specific careers initiatives and seeing what potential there might be for those initiatives in the post-16 sector. And the 3rd was a piece of research we did for London Higher into black and ethnic minority students' views of their careers guidance in higher education. Just a little bit of background. As you know, in recent years there's been very serious concerns expressed by researchers and policymakers over the quality and quantity of impartial and effective careers education, information, advice and guidance provided to young people in schools, colleges and universities. And this has led to new policy drivers from the government and Ofsted to improve CE-IAG provision. Careers advisors organisations have also expressed concerns regarding funding cuts, the rationalisation of local services and lack of support for careers practitioners. So there's a wealth of literature there that highlights some of the issues that they've been facing. I'm not going to show you loads of text on slides today because that's just too painful when you have a whole long day ahead of you. So I'm going to try and use as few slides as possible. There's been a raft of policies and reports and research just over the last 4 or 5 years, which I'm sure most of you are aware about. The BIS document, New Career Service, Right Advice at the Right Time. There was the Tooley et al. Advancing Ambitions reports that led to a kind of restatement of the Gatsby benchmarks and the Matrix Foundation endorsement and things like that. And of course, one of the central ideas about the Gatsby benchmarks is that organisations that are providing careers advice need to be working within a culture of continuous improvement where learner voice is what's driving improvements to the services. So getting feedback from young people about the careers advice experiences has been vital for driving forward the quality of CE-IAG. And then in 2014, it seems like a long while ago now, what's happened since then? 2 important documents were produced, one for schools, one for colleges, on how Ofsted require the new CE-IAG to be working in schools and the guidelines for that. 2015, Louise Archer at King's College, another big report coming out about careers advice to young people, the Aspires 2 project, basically lamenting the state of careers advice and guidance that was given to year 11, saying that provision was patchy, quality was uneven, and certainly only about 50% of year 11 pupils were receiving good, impartial careers advice. Since then, this year, we've had a new education subcommittee paper on education skills and the economy. Again, very negative towards careers organisations, very critical of the impacts that CIAG has on young people across FE and HE. And now the same report on programmes of study. And it will be interesting to see how the new Skills Minister and Justine Greening, the Secretary of State, take forward these agendas for programmes of study in sixth forms and colleges as we move forward. But it's a very different world we're in this week than perhaps a couple of weeks ago. Same report, programmes of study, just come out. The new skills plan, only just announced this week. a lot of uncertainty about how far the new Skills Minister, Robert Halfon, will push those through using the careers agenda. So I'd just like to leave that up for a while and just talk a little bit through some of the generic research that we already have, things that we know, themes that are have been coming out of research reports for several years now. The first is that we know young people change jobs frequently in their first few years of employment. There's a pattern there in the UK. And so because of that factor, we know that young people need a mixture of broad generic transferable skills as well as some specialised skills. That seems to be the best balance for young people to enter the job market. There is consistency in the research reports that show young people do need a better understanding of the world of work, and we need to find ways to continually narrow the distance between education and employment and the worlds of work for them. We also know that CEIG needs to start early in primary school. It needs to be a regular experience of students and pupils, and it needs to be an integrated feature of their school life and of their programs of study, and that's what's difficult to do, especially once you get into the post-16 sector, because there are so many industrial sectors and so many qualifications, so many courses. It's hard to integrate all of them under one model, and we know that a one model approach doesn't work. Anyway, we need diverse models. To deal with this, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the marketisation. If I can get my slides to move. The diversification and the marketplace now, as a bewildering range of organisations have emerged over the last few years to broker school employment partnerships, provide work experience placements, to give employer talks, external workplace visits, employer-led workshops, and a presence at the traditional careers fairs, skills events that happen around the country. Now, I think for those of us within education and careers guidance, the picture is actually bewildering. The amount of choice and sophistication and the complexity of the agencies that are working in the field is incredible. And in London, it's probably even more incredible because there is a real concentration of different agencies. And I haven't managed to fit them all on this slide. I'd have loved to have put some other organisations up here. Inspiring the Future, part of Education Employers, is not there, and it should be, but there just wasn't room on the slide because the field is so crowded with agencies and initiatives. And that sometimes makes it very, very difficult for us to understand the roadmap, the terrain we're dealing with. And if it's bewildering to us, how bewildering is it indeed to parents and to young people? Well, they navigate it, of course, much better than perhaps we do. I'd like to talk today about give a summary of three very, very specific initiatives. The first is the work of a registered charity called Believe in Young People, which is working out of Milton Keynes, and it's been working in the kind of Midlands area and also doing some work in Hertfordshire and other parts of the country. I want to talk a little bit about the National Career Service Prospects Inspiration Agenda, which is a top-sliced special unit within the National Career Service that produces bespoke work experience talks with employers for schools and colleges, and very briefly, Access to Higher Education conducted some research in universities into the career experiences of undergraduates from black and ethnic minority groups. I think really what I've tried to address is this question. In preparation for this conference, there was a long list of bullet points of different questions the conference was interested in. And I guess this is the one that I'm interested in as a researcher, and this is the one we're interested in most as a centre. It's what are the effects of specific employment engagement activities, so whether it's mentoring, work experience placements, recruitment skills, careers provision, under what circumstances are they optimised, and how can individual activities be choreographed to optimise impact. So we've been very much looking at what the impacts of these various initiatives are within these three projects, and really with the aim to find out, well, how do they work? And if they work, why do they work? How do they work? And we'll come to ways of evaluating that in a moment. I'll read that out so you don't have to read all the slides. Believing Young People is a very unique, but not completely unique, service. But what's unique about it, I guess, it's a one-stop shop. So it does absolutely everything for careers guidance. It's mainly been working with schools and is now expanding into post-16 centres, a registered charity. It's a small team of around 20 people. And what they've managed to do is to develop a web portal that is centred around the young person. So the young person comes for career guidance. They go through a series of assessments to find out what their interests are, their career interests, their skills, the qualification programs they're following, and then there is the matchmaking. So there's a traditional brokerage model here where they then look for local employers who might take them on and give them some work experience. But where I think Believing Young People exceeds the standard brokerage model is that they've developed an algorithm that young people can sign up for when they're going through the BIYP program. And they can be exposed to all kinds of self-assessment tests, skills tests, self-assessment tests that test their employability skills across a range of criteria. And when they're partnered with a work placement company or an employer, they are able to share the development in their skills that they gain through their work placements. This is all sort of information that's gathered on their site, if you like. And the service is really, really attractive to some schools and some colleges who are finding it in these really difficult times of cuts to budgets and difficulties with staffing. This sort of one-stop shop solution is a kind of trustworthy and reliable way of giving careers education information advice across a school from one central place that doesn't rely on lots of school staff having to be trained up as advisors, work placement coordinators in different departments. So there can be a significant cost saving to schools in using such an agency. It's not the only one, it's not completely unique. I think the unique feature is the big portal area it allows learners to access and develop. And as going back to the Gatsby standards, you know, a central feature of all these kind of career agencies is that while they're providing these services, they're continually looking for feedback from employers, from the young people, from teachers, in order to improve the service. So they are continuously evaluating their services. They're asking employers to feedback, how did that student do on that work placement? What did they learn from it? They're asking the young people, can you quantify the gains you got out of this work placement in terms of your skills, your knowledge, your understanding of this particular area of work? So it's been a wonderful topic to look at. And if I can just give you some headline successes for this agency. Across the piece, a very broad figure here, BIYP system has shown that for the young people who go through the system, there's been a 32% increase in their overall skills and behaviours in terms of employability skills. They've delivered in their 3 or 4 years of operation over 3,000 work experience placements. They've engaged over 515 schools and colleges. They have 8 major national employers signed up, and over 2,000 local employer sites were engaged in the first 6 months. Initial successes for Believing Young People were in the catering and hospitality sector with companies like Costa and Hilton. One of the really interesting things is that they've asked employers who work with the agency, what do you think of our young people in terms of their work readiness? And what BIYP have found was that about 65% of young people were judged to be employable and work ready after going through the first level of the programme. And they've supported the transition of over 1,700 young people into apprenticeships of work. So I think for a small outfit, that is quite a significant achievement. They've also been using surveys. They surveyed 600 learners from Key Stage 3 and 4. They then repeated the survey, and this is one they conducted with CBIA and CBI and Whitbread in 2015. The survey was repeated with 1,000 non-believing young people, students. And some of the key findings were that This kind of BIYP solution develops a high-quality talent pipeline. 36% of their students considered management responsibilities as important, compared to about 19 from non-believing young people students. They were about 20% more confident about making informed career decisions once they'd gone through this program, been linked with the employer, done their own skills audit, and found a pathway that works for them locally and fits into their life. There is still a problem with the academic vocational divide, as we know. The survey showed that over half of the young people on the programme were more likely to favour a degree over work-based learning or vocational routes. We know that's still a problem. Of course, the problem is that young people, and certainly parents, don't often know that apprenticeships can lead to degrees, that we have graduate schemes, we have higher apprenticeships, and there's a range of ways that students can move from vocational programmes into academic programmes, and yet they're seen as being two completely separate paths. They're not, and it's very much depending on the industry. In the future, what we're hoping to do with BIYP is, we know they're extending their reach geographically. They have a new website. They've got some sixth form pilots going on with us that we're waiting for some reports back on those soon. And they've also been helping us to develop some of our research into programs of study. And the other thing, of course, is because they have such a big, extensive database now, they can start to collect longitudinal data. And one of the issues is we've got a lot of data on the short-term impacts of careers advice and guidance, but we haven't got much in the longer term. So looking at the longer term development and the progression of young people through the system, we hope to get some more data on that later on as we work with them some more. The second agency we looked at was the Inspiration Agenda, which is part of the National Careers Service. It's a 5% top sliced budget, ring-fenced for inspiration activities. One of the drawbacks at the moment of the service is that they have to piggyback on the National Career Service website. They don't have a website of their own. But basically what Inspirations do is they provide inspiring employer talks and activities with schools and colleges from year 7 all the way through to year 13. They also have a big presence at the major national careers events and skill fairs, giving provisional impartial CIAG. And they're working in partnership with the London LEP, with London Ambitions and the Tourism Enterprise advisors. So it's quite an interesting setup there. Again, a very small team. We're probably looking at under 10 people providing this particular project. There's a link to their email address. I know that's very hard to see up the top. Just looking at the top bullet points. What they've managed to do over their 2 years of operation is become very adept at matching the needs of schools and their pupils and colleges to employers in particular sectors. And they've achieved good coverage of all of the major sectors over the last few years. Their main activities are really to facilitate really inspiring and interesting talks from employers, generally off school campus as well. So at neutral venues, interesting venues, business and scientific venues, as opposed to always taking employers into school buildings. Now that still happens, but it seems to be much more enjoyed by young people when they're taken off of school or out of campus and they go somewhere new, they see something new, they see something about the world of work, they see real work establishments, and they talk to professionals from a range of industries, employers from a range of sectors, who will show them how something is made, how young people can make progress within that particular sector, and so on. They've been doing mock interviews, all kinds of things like that. I'd just like, again, to share with you some headlines. The total number of young people that have been engaged by the Prospects team is over 11,500 young people. They conducted over 100 employer talks and events over the last year. The school activity, they've engaged with over 200 schools and colleges, and they've engaged with something like 340 employers. They've had particular success with the business and finance and construction industries, but they are expanding into digital tech and arts and design and fashion. So they've covered most of the sectors now since those early days. Again, one of the central commitments of the advisors that work for the National Career Service and Inspiration Project is that after every activity they do with the employer, they do a 4-way evaluation. So they hold an event. One I went to, I spent quite a lot of time at, was a STEM event where they asked 5 employers working in the science industry, science and engineering, digital applications, to come and talk to 6 groups of young people from year 9 to year 11 in a lovely business centre in South London. And the young people were able to play games with the employers, look at what they did, ask questions, look at the products, listen to talks. So there's an interactive session. And then what they do at the end is they ask learners to fill in quite detailed evaluation forms. What did you learn? Why did you come here? What was good? How could we improve it? And they ask the same questions to the teachers who come, they ask the same questions to the employers who take part, and they also evaluate the event as careers advisors themselves. So again, a 4-way evaluation from everything that they do that then feeds back into their future planning for better events. So they're getting much better at it as they get the feedback from learners. Some typical feedback from that event. 92% of students reported gaining a better understanding of the world of work. 86% of students said they gained a better understanding about specific job roles. 84% reported understanding more about the qualifications and skills needed by employers. So there's no doubt in my mind that the work that's being done by the Inspirations Project has been extremely valuable to the young people who went to the events. It's not unproblematic. It would be rather excuse me, I'll find my next place. It would be rather shallow to suggest that these things happen easily. They sometimes brokering relationships between schools and employers can be difficult. It can be difficult to find the right approach. It can be difficult to find the right staff in schools to approach to kickstart initiatives. And it'd be quite hard to get commitment from employers and schools to work together at the same time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work and negotiation. So given those targets that I've mentioned, I think they've done very well to establish things as far as they have. I'd also like to say something about the large events, the large skill shows, the large careers fairs. They do tend to get a bad press. But actually, I was at the London Skills Show this year, back in March. I was there all day, and employers and careers advisors were at it all day. The place was packed. There were about 70 employer stands. National Career Service Inspiration Advisors were there as well, a team of about 10 advisors. And they were at it all day, constantly. A constant stream of young people and their parents, desperate to make sense of this hugely bewildering scene. Where do I go best? If I want to become an engineer, well, I've seen loads of stuff. I've seen apprentices, I've seen higher degrees. What's best? Where should I go? Should I consider the RAF? Should I consider the services? The place was absolutely buzzing all day. And again, evaluation forms being filled out by advisors after the advice is given. So I think there is a place for the large skills shows, the large careers fairs. They still have a purpose. Young people really enjoy them. They particularly enjoy the London Skills Show because towards the end Boris Johnson appeared and gave a talk on skills and young people and a very rousing, positive, upbeat skills, carry on the good work, you're doing fantastic work, etc. And as he left the building, he was followed by a group of about 40 or 50 young people, all chanting his name as he left the building. Great. I mean, that gives the event some kudos. But the enthusiasm actually was building up through the day of the event. Boris Johnson was just a little squirt of fresh cream on the top. As we go forward with this, The small, more targeted events like STEM events that Inspirations put on are equally really enjoyed by the great majority of the young people who go there. And a lot of thinking goes into preparing and matching the kind of school pupils who need exposure to these smaller targeted events. So we had, for example, we had one speaker who was a geneticist, a female scientist, and because of that, we invited about 3 or 4 classes of girls from years sort of 11 to year 13 to come and have a listen to this lady scientist speaking about women in science. It was a really good day. Okay, must carry on. I'd just like to say going forward that the Inspirations project are focusing down more on impacts now, and we're doing some work with them as a centre next year to have a look at those specific skills impacts. So what are they learning in terms of knowledge? What can they do after these things that they couldn't do before? So we're trying to start to measure fine impacts and developing rubrics for that. And we're also looking at the possibility of working more with needs groups and looking at the work that employer engagement can do to help specific groups of young people who may be slightly disaffected in their schools and colleges. And there's a link to some videos that are on the side there. Finally, I want to talk very briefly about the London Higher Access to HE Prepare to Succeed project. This was a piece of research that the Institute of Education Centre for Post-14 Centre for Education was asked to do this year. And it was basically to find out the opinions of first and second year black and minority ethnic undergraduate students, how they felt they'd been advised, if you like, between leaving secondary school and starting university, and how they felt the experience went for them. And you can see the universities that were included. We had the London South Bank, London School of Economics, UCL ourselves, Greenwich University, Kingston University, Greenwich School of Management, the Royal Veterinary College, RBC, and St Mary's University. So a big diverse group of universities. The students came from all kinds of subject courses. They were very representative of the university offer. And I'd just like to share with you some of the things that we found. First of all, a large majority of the students we spoke to over 200 undergraduate students, they were basically pleased with their course and their choices. Having been there, most of them had been there for a year, some of them had started their second year, and on the whole, they were pleased with where they were. There were a few who weren't, but they were a handful. Majority were very happy with the choices they'd made and how they'd got there. But the path that led them there was by no means straightforward. I mean, we kind of asked them, you know, how did you get here? How did you get to university? Were you guided by, you know, a college teacher, your school, your sixth form? Were you guided by careers advisors? No, none of that really. The people who tended to be most influential on students' decision making were peers. What a surprise. Peers and parents. Peers, then friends of parents, including the employers, and wider social networks. Teachers, actually, were mentioned more as sources of advice and as sort of direction finders for young people than careers advisors. Careers advisors featured very low in the data. So it seems to be that when people are looking at their choices after A-levels, thinking about university, it's what their friends are doing and what their family think that seem to be the really big motivators for young people. The research showed that young people do almost all of their research online. Some brave individuals will turn up at campus and have a look around before informal open days or induction days or freshers weeks. But there is a very wide difference between what I call the sort of 4 different groups of students that we find in HE nowadays. First of all, the difference between home students and international students, and between students who have just coming straight out of school or college, going into university, and those who are returning to university as mature students. Those old traditional divisions are still there, and the experiences between young and old, home and international, are still quite different, but then you would expect that. There was a problem with isolation for international students. I spoke to quite a number of students who literally flew in from very diverse countries across the world to start their first year at university. They flew in for induction week. It's the first time they'd ever been in the country. They were trying to find accommodation or find where the accommodation was that they'd arranged. They didn't know anybody, and there was a risk at some campuses of them becoming isolated if they couldn't find students from their own home countries to partner up, buddy up with. So what we were finding is, but for most students, there is a need for mentoring and buddy systems, especially in that first year at university, in those first few months when students are trying to get their heads around a new location, around a new lifestyle, very complex courses with very complex assessment criteria, and they just want someone to talk about it with. Tutor's time has been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. It's really hard to get extended time with a tutor these days in a college or a university. Tutorial times have been squeezed, as we know, by the cuts. So if that's going to happen, then, well, we have to find informal ways to help young people to negotiate their ways through transitions. And it helps to have student ambassadors. It helps to have buddy systems where older students, maybe second year students, talk to first year students and help induct them into the processes of university life, and are there as a friend and can give a little bit more time than the official advisors and support staff who do their best for their students coming in. Open days are still extremely popular, freshers weeks, all of the things you would expect. I just want to spend a couple of seconds talking about racial discrimination, because when we talk about the experiences of black and ethnic minority students, one of the concerns is, one of the questions was, although we didn't ask this in the research, is there an issue of discrimination with careers guidance? It's been said in some of the research that maybe there is some discrimination on the grounds of culture or race or gender or class. And some of those issues are quite important. Now, we didn't ask our students, have you been discriminated against? But what we did is we listened very carefully to their experiences of being guided. And if there was a hint that they felt that maybe they were being discriminated against, we hooked into that and pulled it out and said, okay, tell us about your experience. Out of the 200 students we spoke with in 24 groups, discrimination maybe only came up on 2 or 3 occasions, and it was never discrimination by the university. It was always much further back. So there was one lady who'd arrived from Latin America, was a student, a mature student, who had tried to get into some of the London dance schools. And one dance school, she didn't name it, thank goodness, but she said when she went there for the audition, she was perfectly well qualified, well experienced, but she had a feeling that she didn't fit in because the dance company were all white and she was Latin American. That was one experience. But she said she couldn't prove it was racism, but there was a feeling. But that came out. Another lady, who was an older Jamaican lady, said that she was trying to find a way back into business. She'd got quite a lot of business experience. She was just completing a business degree. And when she went for some careers advice, she felt she was being nudged towards the low-hanging fruit. You could do this, you could perhaps think about doing this job. But her feeling was that the jobs that were offered to her were perhaps a little low, given her qualifications and experience. And she wondered whether this was because she was a woman, was it because she was of colour, what were the reasons for that? And there were another group of students at another university, a group of male African students, who were all studying for various business studies degrees. And one of the things they said is that what they like about the flexibility of the kind of business courses that you can do at university now is that it does help prepare you if you want to become self-employed or a self-start business. What they experienced, they said, is they'd all worked in high street companies, but they felt as mature African men, that there was a glass ceiling, that they do very, very well in middle management positions as they accrue more qualifications. And when they tried to break through that into senior positions, they felt perhaps they got overlooked, and they wondered, they didn't know, they wondered whether this was a kind of discrimination at the higher levels. So their thinking was, if they take a very flexible self-start business type degree, that they can circumvent that whole process and be their own bosses. And that's why they were on that particular pathway. That's what they wanted.
they wanted to be in command of their own destiny, run their own businesses, because they felt they weren't getting the opportunities out there in the world of work. But then, as I say, this was a very, very tiny percentage. This was 3 or 4 students out of 200. Thank you. I'm aware I need to hurry up. I'll go for that one. I think one of the things I'd like to say as we're moving towards a conclusion is that we mustn't forget that whether we're talking about students in sixth forms, students in colleges, students working their way through universities' degrees, what's very common, don't try and read the slide, honestly, it's not worth hurting your eyes. I'll talk you through it. Learners are earning while they're learning. The relationship between learning and earning is continuous now from quite a young age. We know that. We know the majority of young people who are studying are also doing some kind of work, and vice versa. And we know, and people here at the conference yesterday were talking about the fit between students' work experience and their aspirations. And sometimes they go together well. So there's a lot of kids out there who are doing jobs, part-time jobs, which align roughly with the direction of travel that they want to go later on in life. Other people, particularly the younger students, less experienced, less qualified perhaps, there's less alignment between the part-time jobs they might be doing in between sixth form or in the first couple of years at college and their higher aspirations. Now I think, some of the research I read last year, the Tooley et al., the Advancing Ambitions, there's this suspicion that some careers advice is actually reproducing social inequalities rather than trying to mitigate them. And I found that quite hard to accept, because I don't know of any consciously of any agencies or careers advisors who would want to hold young people back or stream them into low status work or work with low income. But nevertheless, there are significant findings in the research that say perhaps we used to call them institutionalized problems, that there is some kind of institutionalized discrimination which reproduces low expectations for certain groups. I think the way to overcome this is to have a model of CEIAG, which is a double loop. This is my invention. So rather than seeing careers advice and guidance as a linear thing, that the student wants to get from A to B, therefore they have some guidance that helps them there. I think if we have a straight linear model of careers advice and guidance, then that is open to a system where its social inequalities might be reproduced and social mobility may not be maximised. But if we think of CEIG for each individual student, it's personalised to the individual, and it goes through 2 loops. It goes through one loop to look at where they are now and where they're thinking of going, and looks at the sort of interests, skills that those young people already have, looks at the work experience they've managed to accrue. So you get a general idea of the direction of travel and what needs to be done to help that young people become more skilled, become more qualified on that. But I think what we need is a second loop of advice and guidance, which deals with our aspirations. So for example, you might have a young person, whether they came in through Believing Young People or the Careers Service, and they're working perhaps in a Costa, and they've already gone through quite a lot of careers advice and guidance to get there, and to stay, maybe to become a barrister or a team leader, depending on their qualifications and skills. So a certain amount of careers advice has gone into getting that young person into that position. But what they then need is to say, okay, what are you thinking of doing further? Are you thinking of developing into a team leader? Are you thinking, maybe, actually, I'd like to do my accountancy exams. Okay, brilliant. Is there a way you can consolidate your work with Costa while taking your accountancy exams? So double loop. That ensures those aspirations are taken into account in CIAG. And I'm sure as we go forward with the research of the centre, there might be ways of formalising a sort of double loop CIAG and matching that into the Gatsby and Matrix standards. That's it. Any questions from anyone?